Hello everyone and welcome to today's GESS Talks webinar, Empowering Every Learner, SEN and Inclusive Education in Practice. We're delighted to have you with us for what promises to be an insightful and impactful discussion. As we move into 2025 and beyond, the landscape of special educational needs and inclusive education continues to evolve. What shifts are shaping the way we support students with diverse learning needs? How can educators, schools, and families work together to create more inclusive, accessible, and empowering learning environments? Today, we're joined by leading experts who will share practical strategies and innovative approaches to ensure every learner receives the support they need to thrive. Unfortunately, Massrat is unable to join us today, but we still have an incredible lineup of speakers who will provide valuable insights and expertise on this crucial topic. Before we begin, just a quick note, you'll find our Q&A tab on your screen. Please feel free to send in your questions at any time, and the speakers will address these at the end of the session. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce today's chair, Dr. Helen Wright. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much indeed, Jahan, and it's such a pleasure to be here. And I know we look like a slightly depleted group in a number of ways, but we're not, because we have amazing people here. Massrat is hoping to join us very shortly, and we've just been reflecting together before joining everybody on the wonderful challenges that technology can provide us with. And I think there's something probably kind of a bit of a metaphor in there for us as we're talking about inclusion in the world. Well, as Jahan said, I'm Dr. Helen Wright, and I work with leaders across the world through coaching, and obviously inclusion is very much on their minds. Joined today also by Faiza Mubeen. Faiza, do you want to just say a couple of words about yourself?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Helen. I'm Faiza Mubeen. I'm working here in Riyadh at Beech School, Riyadh, as a Director of Inclusion. Again, working quite positively with the transformation happening here in the educational landscape, but very much at the front end and trailblazing, I would use that word, in the world of inclusion.
Excellent, excellent. And Louise, it's lovely to have you here as well. Do you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself?
It's amazing. It's an honor to be here, and always an honor to be asked. To still be relevant is a key part of today's world. So I'm Louise Dawson. I'm in Dubai. I've been in the UAE for 14 years, have led outstanding provision in 3 schools, and now I'm self-employed, continuing to develop other schools and develop school improvement processes across the community here.
Wonderful. And Massrat, you've made it despite the challenges with technology. So Massrat, did you just want to just introduce yourself very quickly? You're on mute, Massrat, so we just need to take you off mute. And then if you can...
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can indeed. Yes, well done.
I'm Massrat Shaikh. I'm an educational psychologist. I'm based in Oman, and I work with children who have special needs, learning disabilities. I'm a diagnostic clinician. I do evaluations and assessments and interventions for schools and parents, yes.
Brilliant. So, in fact, we have a trio of amazing, strong women here who've got loads of experience. Yes, loads of experience. So, I'm really looking forward to this. And we're going to start by just looking at trends and what you've seen and what you've noticed. And Faiza, what if you were to think, well, here we are, we're going into 2025. What particular trends have you seen so far leading up to now? Where are we headed in 2025 as a result of that?
I think changing trend is the constant element. I can say that's what's constant in our educational landscape is the trend. That's like, there used to be an element where trend is the setting point, and then you sit on it and you build on top of it. Right now, with the entirety of changing towards getting all the way from digitization to environmental sustainability and towards inclusion and whatnot, trend is the constant at the moment. And if I were to speak only for the Saudi Arabian aspect, I would state that as much as we are the trendsetters at the moment, we are completely moving in a direction of fast speed bullet train, if we can say that. Yeah.
And you mentioned inclusion there particularly. Within inclusion, what trends have you seen? What's working in inclusion, special needs?
See, I would suggest that from the experience that I've gotten from past 2.5 years here and the 19 years back in Dubai in the UAE, I would say that integration was was the regular market trend, I would say, or the educational trend here, where students would come in, learn from some form of community inclusivity or integration, but then would be sent back into their units. However, now the new setting stone is that where we are talking about a constant inclusion, not just from the community aspect, but also internally, school-wise, classroom-wise. So that kind of a new setting and a new milestone is being achieved at the moment.
So, Louise, I mean, listening to Faiza talk about that, does that resonate with you? What are you noticing in terms of direction?
Yeah, so I think within the classroom, definitely pull it in rather than push in rather than pull out. But other things I'm seeing in the landscape is a more neuro-affirming approach to difference and understanding that, you know, we are all different, and so that whole positivity around it. I'm also seeing more acceptance of technology and the use of AI, which is really vital to students, because often they can access learning through digital means where they might not be able to access. We have a massive trend in improvement and monitoring and understanding of well-being and mental health, which I think has always been one of the things that people with additional needs have struggled with. So I think the focus on that since the pandemic has been really key. So for me, the trends that I'm seeing are the neuro-affirming, the AI, and the mental health awareness stuff.
So there's masses in there that we can absolutely unpick as we go through, and hopefully as we go through, you'll be able to pick up some examples of that too. That's brilliant. Massrat, how does that resonate with you?
But I am looking at everything from a clinical perspective because, as a clinician, when I'm working with children, I'm looking from that perspective. And what I would like to see in 2025, yes, there's a lot of concentration on technology and AI and all of that. What we need, and I hope we go that way in 2025, is bridging the gap between technology and its use. So yeah, there are a lot of programs and there's a lot of technology and there's a lot of AI, and it's basically flooding us. But how it's practically being used and how are children actually benefiting from those services is, I think, that's where we should go.
So that's a really interesting question, and I think that picks up on what Louise was saying a moment ago. What have you seen practically, Massrat, in ways in which that's actually worked, in which technology, its use is being implemented in supporting young people with special needs and developing more inclusion? Have you seen anything that you would say, yes, that's it, that's the direction we're headed?
Well, I see a lot of policy making, I see a lot of laws, I see a lot of frameworks, I see a lot of programs. But I'll say, like, I'm just giving an example here. If I have my student who is dyslexic, and this is an actual example of one of my students who is right now in grade 11. Yes, the school has the policy for inclusion, and we have all the programs like assistive technology to support him, and every other program for remedial help. Yet the student is struggling. So that is the reality of it. Because yes, the schools have the policy for inclusion, and that is a physical space that we give to children. But making that a reality is something I think we all should be working on, and for these children to actually benefit from it.
Louise, you're very much at the cutting edge, going into lots of different settings. Is this something that you have seen in action and in practice, the use of technology and dare I say even AI in order to support children? Have you seen this?
So I'm also the parent of 3 autistic children, and I have a 27-year-old who's made his whole thing from AI. His degree is in AI. He's working in IA. So from the cutting edge, absolutely I have. Within the classroom, I am loving watching some of the softwares develop with those AI components, which I was looking at a piece of software yesterday where you can adapt the curriculum. So you might want to teach photosynthesis, but if your student hates yellow buttercups or yellow daffodils, you can adapt the work to be a red tulip. So you can use AI to help students learn the content by adapting the topic, or not the topic, the focus of that learning. So I can see huge benefit. However, the week before, I was at a panel discussion around the overuse of technology and the harm that can do, and trying to get adults to understand that you can say no to apps, you can say no to the time on devices, empowering parents to understand what their children have got access to. So there is always going to be a huge debate. But as we were saying, my partner and I were saying, I remember the time when calculators were completely dismissed for the use in maths exams, because I am that old. So, you know, there is a shift towards it. There is always going to be resistance towards it. Used properly and ethically, it's awesome AI, but also misuse, like everything, can also be harmful. So I hear what Massrat is saying about, you know, understanding where it can be beneficial, but also understanding its limitations, and also how adults around the children need to be empowered.
And you make a good point there about we're talking about SEN, inclusive education, and sometimes it's said, well, here's a tool that will solve the problems of inclusive education. And the point about inclusive education is that everyone's different within it. So it's individualization, which is important at the heart of it. Faiza, have you come across technological means to be able to individualize the opportunities for children, which are really working and which you think, yes, this is the trend, this is where we should be headed?
See, I see it from a completely that standpoint where it's no technology at all, and you have a child who is struggling, let's say, with any form of additional needs, and you have no whatsoever support for that child in the technological factor. And then the amount of struggle that child is going to go through, or would be in that frustration constantly, then to have that support in place and with that balance is the way to equate or to see that what is the outcome or the impact of that technology in the classroom. I have several students who are on the diagnoses of dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and then having the applications of the kind where they can type text, you know, they can read text to help, those kind of, these are really additional assistances in the classroom for that student to feel motivated enough to engage and not to go through that social, emotional damage, seeing others being able to do and not me. Why? So I always wanted to see that if I take that away from that equation, then what's the outcome? And if I'm putting in, and if it's not 100% outcome, but still there is a progress, that is where I do see it. It's exactly how I put a child on a wheelchair, which is manual. And then I put a child on a wheelchair, which the child can operate with a digital button and can navigate himself. It's just like how technologically advanced you are making and enabling that child with that factor in. But again, balancing it, that having that wheelchair and giving that monitor in his hand and tell him to go anywhere on the street is dangerous. You know, it's like giving a bicycle to a child that I've taught you how to ride a bike, take away the side tires and let him go on the street. No, it's that balance. And that's where I again agree with Massrat and Louise that the empowerment of the adults around have to be really organized, like top of the line, that, you know, this is where the screen time ends. This is where your work must have this percentage of this penmanship or readingship or whatever comprehension. So I think that's the balance that we really need to achieve. And it's a challenge.
Do you see that schools are making progress in this, though? That there's a greater understanding that this is what's needed, that individual approach, the use of various, not just technologies, but other tools, but also the understanding that each child is different and will need different approaches, and fundamentally will need adults around them in order to be able to work out for them what might work. Are you seeing that schools are adapting to that more?
I think it's not anymore a matter of choice. It's a matter of your vision and your mission. I mean, if you put it as your foremost vision and mission, that's your, you know, digitization or sustainability or inclusion or all is your vision and mission, and then you want to execute it in the right direction, then it is. It's not a matter of choice anymore. If you're not going to teach your children in the school as educators, then the world out there is quite digital, you know, and so it has to be in your vision, your mission, your responsibility that this is to be taught. No matter what. But yes, the schools have different approaches to it, to be honest. There are schools that are very certain orientation is more academic probably, or like, you know, making only doctors or architects, or if I'm very blunt, then that idea of learning and teaching is okay. It works for them. But then if you're making a holistic, wholesome approach towards children being musicians, being pianists, being, you know, drama or social scientists or doctors or engineers, and then you want them to be also digitally equipped and knowledgeable, then your vision and mission should be very straightforward.
Well, do you know what? That's a call to action for everybody. It's not a choice anymore. Do it. Yes. Absolutely, no question. And actually that determination that's there, that kind of, yes, look, do you know what, people? No excuses. Let's be hung up on anything else. Let's do it. Louise, what do you see are the challenges, the hurdles that stop that call to action happening in schools?
So we still have lack of information. We still have lack of acceptance. We still have lack of money. We still have lack of space. I think that if I had one pot of money and I could throw it anywhere, it would be teacher CPD, totally teacher CPD. I think that when I look at the different curriculums and I look at the different teacher training programs that I've experienced, I'm working in American curriculum schools, Australian MOE schools, I'm looking at local schools, international schools, I'm looking at UK schools, and I look at the difference in training of the teachers and how that looks and is represented in the classroom. It's a vast difference. So one pot of money, yes, I'd love more rooms. Yes, we'd love more resources. Yes, we'd love more tech. Yes, we'd love all of those things. But one pot of money, training, 100%.
So tell us more about that, because that is going to be useful. We've looked at various trends that there are. We've talked a bit about AI. We've talked about technology already. We talked about actually you need this determination to build on what's there. But this is going to be really interesting for people to listen to. What's the best practice you've seen in professional development programs generally, given your experience of all those different curriculum types of schools?
In terms of the training programs, or in terms of the quick wins that help teachers to? Which one do you mean?
Well, let's do both. Which one do you want to go for? We're not going to let you go without both of these.
I'll go for the quick wins. Okay. The quick wins are know your class. So out here in the Middle East, we have 30 children, just for the sake of rounding numbers, 30 children. Yeah. I can guarantee that every single child in that class needs something. They are displaced from their homes. They are away from their families. They might have parents who travel a lot. They may have second language barriers. And this is where especially in the Middle East, we're looking at inclusion more holistically than just special needs. We're looking at second language. We're looking at those advanced learners, those gifted and talented learners, those creative learners. So planning for me, if we could teach teachers, and many of them do, and many, I'm not saying that some people don't and some people do, but making sure that we have a holistic understanding of data, understanding where those children sit in terms of their current abilities, how to then meet those needs, the quick wins in class, like using visuals, giving them keywords in advance, all of those really simple strategies that support all of the children, not just your dyslexic child, or just visuals, keyword vocabulary. These are things that help all children. So that universal design that enables children to be successful, and training our frontline staff in how to plan in advance, know the data informs the strategies, implement universal strategies to all children, don't single them out, and then implement those into classrooms. So those are my quick, top, easy wins when it comes to, but it's plan up front, don't leave it to the last minute. I used to plan when I was a mainstream class teacher. I would plan my next 6 weeks in the holiday so that it was all quite simple, and then I just had to tweak and adapt rather than create lessons every day. So upfront planning.
And do you know what? You're almost describing teaching 101, aren't you? It's like, look, the child first. What do you need to do to put around the child? What about those broader programs, though, that you've seen that might work, or elements of broader programs? So you've got the quick wins, because you're totally right. Teachers need to have that breadth of approach to all children. It's the universal access. So totally right there. Have you seen anything that you would either recommend or encourage people to develop more on in terms of those wider programs or deeper programs of learning?
Do you mean programs for delivery of learning and
for supporting children?
So, and I'm not here to sell GL. There's many parts I like and many parts I don't like it about standardized assessment and testing. But one of their programs is called Welcome. It goes from the age of 5 up to the age of 11. It's really very affordable, and it's really quick to administer. It takes 10 minutes per child, and it can be administered by a parent, by a learning assistant, by a teaching assistant, by a teacher, by an inclusion teacher, literally 10 minutes. And that, when you implement that kind of screening, you then know, and because it's got the big book of ideas and those implementable tools. So if you've got one pot of money for a resource, it would be Welcome in primary. I can't even think on my feet with secondary. But
don't worry, that's already really useful for people, because they're drawing on your experience, so it's great.
I think being able to screen the whole of KG1, KG2 and year 1 and help them with their communication skill, not just speech, not just vocabulary, but their communication skill, that gives you the tasks that you need to do in your class to give those children the best measures of success. And finding that 15 out of 30 children can't identify a happy face on a page is vital to later success. So that's my one program that I would rely on. I'm sure Faiza and Massrat have got other ones.
Yes, well, Massrat, I'm coming to you actually just a second to ask you, because what Louise is saying there is, you said very clearly, Louise, know your child. Then you mentioned screening there and about knowing children. Massrat, what's your experience of what works in trying to really understand children from as early a stage as possible?
I mean, with the current statistics in every classroom, there are at least 5 children out of 25 that would require extra support or have some kind of challenges. So if we have to, like if you were asking me before, what are barriers to inclusion? One of the barriers is this, that we do not identify them on time. That is early intervention. Then is delayed because there was no identification earlier. So at elementary school, it has to be made mandatory that all children go through the screening, because if in 25 you're talking about the statistics of 5 children having, we cannot take the chances of letting them float through elementary school, and only when they get to middle school is we realize that they have had the challenges all throughout. And it's actually towards grade 4 or 5 that you actually see the problems emerge. That is when you start seeing them having a lag between their academics and their ability, because others have moved ahead and the students haven't found their foundational skills yet. So we do not wait until then, but if we could do that earlier screening, and that would be one of the ways to actually make inclusion work.
And is that something,
Mhm.
Massrat, you're seeing is happening in schools or not?
No.
No.
It is, for now, it is only when things escalate and things have become to an extent severe enough that there is already a lag. It is not in any ways pre-intervention. That is, you are not doing anything before the problem has actually become severe enough that now you have to do the treatment for it. So we are on that model currently, and it would be lovely to see that we shift to this model, that schools do implement earlier screening. And yes, I agree totally with Louise. Teachers training is absolutely essential there, because they are the ones to catch the earlier signs. And having that SEN training for all teachers, again, should be made mandatory as part of teaching courses, as part of their teaching programs. I usually get surprised that mainstream teachers have no clue how to identify simple problems like reading disorders, all right, which are so common, which are absolutely so common. Like these children are in every classroom. So how is it that this is not part of teachers training at all? So it has to become part of teachers training as to how to screen children, how to identify the normal learning disorders, the most common learning disorders, and how to give the immediate first aid. That is the immediate intervention, which can be accommodated within the classroom. Just assessing them differently, or giving a little extra time, or assessing children more orally than through written work, reading aloud, or not putting them, even if it means not putting them in front of the class if they do not know how to read. So that kind of sensitivity will come when they have the awareness that there is a problem there.
And that's really helpful and summarizes incredibly strongly the different stages that people need to go through in terms of making sure this is implemented fully. And Faiza, your school in Beech Hall, it already has a reputation for being very inclusive. What Massrat is saying, do you recognize some elements to that? Would you add to it? And what's your approach?
So yes, we do have the reputation of being very inclusive, but again, it's a journey. You have that capability of starting something new and putting into place, thinking that you're putting everything in the right order is in itself a big blessing to have. And we were blessed enough to do that from the very beginning. What I agree with Massrat is that having that capability of being a teacher or a support teacher in the class, and that screening knowledge that you can literally identify that this is not something, a phase, it is probably a learning need, it's a developmental delay or a global delay or environmental deprivation or whatever you may name it, it is there, and we really need to address it. We agreed on one clear policy, was that whoever we are having in the department as an inclusion team, they must carry an accredited degree in bachelor's in special needs or psychology or sociology. There was a pushback because it can be expensive to have everyone with a certain degree, but to sustain quality in keeping the child as the center, as the focus of the whole scenario, there was no choice than having someone who is fully knowledgeable in that aspect. And we were blessed again that we have about 80 learning support assistants that are all carrying an accredited degree in either of the faculties, and they are trained in that clinical aspect. So they do that kind of screening. But again, to maintain that balance, because what happens is that if you get that tool in your hand and you have that thing like, oh, he's this and she's that, and this student has this need and this, the whole environment becomes screeners. To maintain that balance, that no, it's just a child. You will see the development. You will see that he would grow out of this situation because it's a child and he's developing, or it's a student. That balance that becomes a little crucial to achieve, that if everybody is smart. So to have that thing in place is very important. And the other thing is that I always say passion is an emotion, and it's a fleeting emotion. So you need to have that correct skill set and a toolkit as an educator, as a teacher assistant, learning support assistant, or a shadow teacher, to be in the class with the student with that skill set in your hand and that toolkit in your hand that you are constantly implementing and adapting on the go, that whatever is needed for this child is there in your box. So that's where we see it.
And just carrying that on, because that is brilliant to hear. How do you ensure that all the adults around the child, all of those people, are able to communicate effectively? Because that's another part of it, that creating that tissue that meshes together. How do you do that? Because I'm sure that people listening in would really like to know what that is.
See, it starts from the very beginning. Again, as I said, if you have a clear vision and a mission, no matter what route you were taking, you're going towards the same direction. That is the foremost setting stone of any situation when you're planning to do an inclusion mindset school. Then comes hiring. If you're hiring a teacher, from the very beginning, the aspect of inclusion questionnaire should be there. That what do you think about so-and-so? In-tray questions from the leadership while hiring should include a question at least that has some form of SEND or additional needs or all abilities related question, that how are you seeing it? And anything that is near to the red flag should not be a part of that school, because again, you have to have that student as your center, as your focus, that no matter how fabulous that teacher is looking from the teaching and learning aspect, if the inclusion mindset is not there, then you are not doing a favor to anyone. So starting from there, and then the second step is when you start the term, you set the tone, that this is what we are, and the advocates around inclusion, the advocates around well-being, the advocates around student focus and center is everywhere. They should be like around the building, that, you know, this is what we are here for. And it should start from the leadership. There was something really fantastic, and I always quote it because it just happened recently, that one of our accreditation body was with us, and they were living with us for a few days, and they made a comment at their exit point, which was really amazing. The lady who was here said that she's never been to a school where finance team also speaks the inclusion language, which was really music to my ears. That this is amazing. That our finance team was nothing to do with the academic side, but when they were questioned and they were into that panel of discussion, they were also talking the inclusive language, which was beautiful. So that's where the advocacy comes in.
Yes, yeah. And I'm sure people will want to talk to you more about that at a later stage. And Louise, I can feel your vigorous kind of engagement with this. Tell me, when Faiza's saying all of this, what's your reaction to that?
I think we need to be really careful not to teacher bash. Teachers didn't grow up in classrooms which were inclusive, so therefore we shouldn't expect them to understand inclusivity, which is why it's so important. One of my things is, if our children grow up in inclusive classrooms, they will learn to accept diversity in a more vigorous way. So we are working with young people now who hopefully in the next generation, because it is generational, will be more inclusive in have knowledge and skill that today's teachers don't, and that's not today's teachers' fault, and it's not their fault that it's not in teacher training, and actually it's a community movement, not just a teacher. You know, it's like teachers are seen to be responsible for mental health, they seem to be responsible for physical health and well-being and their diet and their, you know, and I just think, give teachers a break, they're actually there to teach, right? So I do struggle with it, them being responsible for everything. So our parents have a responsibility to understand it, that, you know, everyone needs to further educate themselves, and that over time will reduce the stigma, which is one of the things I know that Faiza and Massrat will also struggle with, is I don't want my child identified, I don't want them labelled. We know that children get labelled, they get labelled stupid, they get labelled slow, they get labelled left behind. I would much rather have a label which enables us to give them the support that they need, and, you know, reducing that stigma worldwide is tough. But we're doing it today for tomorrow. There is always going to be things today that we can't change.
Mm-hmm. So you make a very good point there about tomorrow, and yet I'm hearing also today, hearing Massrat saying what needs to be in schools. I've heard you, Louise, saying, look, I've seen really good practice, and you're, you know, making sure you're in schools and you're pushing that forward. If Faiza's describing that this is the case, it happens, you know, in her school. So it seems to me that if we take all of the experiences of all three of you, and if somebody listening to this or watching this and hearing you could say, do you know what? If they can do it, we can do it. And there's something strong coming out around attitude and determination that's there. But I was interested in what you were saying there, Louise, about stigma. And Massrat, and I want to come to you because you will work with parents a lot. And I just wondered what you did, what you do in order to ensure that parents are able to be on this journey of inclusion as well. What's your experience of that? Right, I think you're on mute, Massrat, so just need to take you off.
You can hear me?
There we go. Yes, yeah.
Yes. So I would say, I mean, yes, I mean, it's a process to get sometimes parents on board. Sometimes you have to be really patient and explain, but it also has to do a lot about our culture and keeping everything the way the awareness goes about things over here. And it's building up. Like, we have changed a lot in last 10 years. The 10 years back when I started practicing, things were very, very different. The more the awareness increases, it's different now, and parents are usually much aware. So what I would like to see us going towards is more of schools becoming community hubs where we open our doors to parents, include awareness programs for parents, and this should not be an exception. It's again, I'm coming hard on schools again. But I think those are the places. I mean, schools are the places where they are places for community to come together, and they are the places where awareness should be raised. They are the places where topics should be discussed. Irrespective, we do not wait till one child is picked up and one family is picked up and that family is put on spot, that now you have to go and get this something strange done to your child to identify, and then there would be a label. Like any parent, if I'm the parent, I certainly would feel threatened because I haven't got any background about what is going on, what is all this about, why is my child put on spot. So immediately I would have that barrier towards talking. Yes, it is my job as a psychologist. When parents come in, I have to go through several conversations to show them exactly how this is going to be helpful. But before we get to that point, I think we have made strides in education in Middle East. Like, we have come so far. All we have to do is now go further, and going further, I think that's the way that we open our schools, make them community hubs, increase awareness, talk to parents beforehand, because this is not something rare. This is everywhere in every classroom. This could be any child. And sometimes you take the child in KG1 and KG2, and you're not even aware that by the time they're in grade 3 and 4, they have a learning problem. That's only later that you realize. So when the children are taken in, why isn't there a parents orientation program on learning problems? We do have orientation programs. So make the parents aware, make them aware that they could be, it is possible that your child could have what signs that you should be looking for, what should you be doing in case there is something that you notice. Come talk to us. So you've already put them in the mindset, then they are ready. If there is something, they're prepared to accept it. Yeah.
And at the risk of adding to Louise's list of all the things that teachers should do and schools should do, actually, that's a really good piece of advice, isn't it? It's about make it for school leaders in particular. And Faiza, you said that school leadership it's got to come from the top. A really good piece of concrete advice, which is for school leaders to say, right, okay, how are we going to get people understanding? How are we going to get the community to move forward in inclusion? How is that going to help us? Well, it is about opening the school up. It is about parent programs that you've just described there, Massrat. And that's something that anybody watching or listening to this could really just take back to their schools and say, let's start with this. And that's about fostering that culture of inclusion. And Louise, if I were to ask you what else you think schools could do to foster this culture of inclusion, what might you say to that? Is there anything else you've noticed? Anything else you've seen that you could say, right, do this, and this is going to help?
So again, I'm all about the quick wins. So most schools have a newsletter. They should be including weekly information about different topics around inclusion, whether that's special needs, gifted and talented, or English as an additional language, or multilingualism, or any other of the flavors of your context, and making sure that that drip feeding is going into the community. Most parents of neurotypical or non-SEN children are not going to turn up to a coffee morning about special needs because it doesn't impact them, or they don't think it impacts them. So drip feeding information, and then making our children visible without the charity, because our children are not puppets to be on display, without the patronizing element of, oh, look, this child's got Down syndrome, we're going to put them on the stage and make them sing a song, and then we can all smile sweetly at them, without the patronizing, without the charity. Give them meaningful opportunity to take part in the community, which is visible to the community, to show that even with the most severe disability, even with the most extreme neurodiversity, even with the most extreme language challenges, people are still valued and worthwhile in our community. So drip feeding through newsletters and drip feeding information. And if you're doing a presentation, qualification routes, understanding that not everyone is going to get their exam board or their GCSE board or their leaver certificate at the age of 16, and that's okay. As a maths GCSE taker at 42, it's absolutely okay. So
perfect.
It's just all of that awareness and that acceptance, and it's all of it is okay for our children.
Excellent. That's so helpful and so directly useful. And Faiza, what advice would you give to school leaders or schools generally about fostering that culture of inclusion?
Again, I love quick wins. I love this drip feeding idea, because it is where you're, again, as I said, setting the tone, and then consistency in maintaining the tone. What I feel at the moment is the need is that we are working towards identifying from the early years, talking a lot from the early years aspect, and then going towards primary and towards the middle and high school or secondary. We do not really still have the reverse engineered plan in terms of when we are equipping these students to a certain learning style or to a certain journey in life. Where are we dripping them forward in real market? So as school leaders, I think we really need to come up forward and start doing market conversations, that if I am here in school crafting, identifying and crafting pianist or a painter or a musician, or a reciter or a narrator, a social scientist or whatever, are you ready in the market to take him for a proper wage every day, single day? So that is where I believe that ministerial conversations, connection with the real market has to start. I was really proud when Clemmy informed me that she had actually approached certain
your principal, yes, yeah,
our principal, hospitality industry, because some of our students, they did a massive roundup of presentations, neurotypical and neurodivergent, on sustainability and local food aspect to bring sustainability on the table, and it was amazing presentations. But then what are we doing with them? So she kind of like had an idea that let us approach the market and bring them on board and let this market have that connection with the school. We have another fantastic student who plays beautiful piano. Actually, you have to really get to stop him. When he starts, there is no stop. So, I mean, if we have identified and he's got this talent, can he make something out of it as an enabling, useful, money-making commuter of the society? That is where I think the exit points need to be discussed, not just from the university aspect, that this many credit hours a child has taken, what is he doing, which university is he going? No, if he has to go to the wage market, who is ready to do that intake? So I think that's also a responsibility to round up the entire piece, starting from the early years all the way to making them an enabling wage earner in society.
And there's that question that or the point you're making there about working closely together. And I'd like to turn to a couple of the questions that have been asked in the Q&A. And there's one question here, which is, it says, what's the best strategy for differentiating instruction for a child? And how can a teacher and an LSA work together effectively to support them? Two questions, really. But I just wonder if there's something in there that maybe Louise, you might want to answer. How do you see teachers and LSAs working together effectively, and also what's the best strategy for differentiating instruction for a child?
I think Faiza and Massrat also have some really good strategies that they use, and I think that the answer that you get would be different for every single child and every single curriculum and every single environment. Okay, so that's a very complex question. The way that I have we lost Helen? The way that I work when I'm working with you're back, good. The way that I work when I'm looking at a child is I look at the top 3 needs. So when I'm sitting down to do a parent review, an IEP meeting, a termly meeting, however you call it, I'm going to go around the room. This is my best strategy ever, and it's never failed me. And I say to parents, and then I say to the teacher, and then I say to the child, what's going well, each in turn. And each one of them will tell me what's going well, but then immediately they'll say, but, and they will tell me what's going wrong. So a parent will say, well, the spelling's coming on really well, but they're not sleeping. And the teacher will say, yes, the spelling is coming on really well, but they're not forming sentences. And the child will say, yes, I am not sleeping very well because you keep asking me to use a pen. And so therefore I have my 3 strategies. Okay, so I'm going to send the parent lots of information about sleep. I might connect them with a sleep consultant. I might connect them with some mindfulness, some videos that the children can watch, giving them advice, a strategy sheet on reducing technology before sleep, all of those things. And then with the teacher, I'm going to say, I'm going to do the opposite. Have you tried technology, or whatever is suited to that scenario, because it's going to be different. And then I'm going to look at the child and say, right, you're struggling to use a pen. Is it too thin? Is it too thick? Is it too scratchy? Do you need a rollerball? Do you need a pencil? Do you need a pencil grip? Let me have a look with you. Let's observe what's going on. Let's look at why that is difficult for you. Have you not been taught how to form the English letters because you are used to writing in Arabic? What is that barrier? And then I'm going to implement those 3 strategies for a 6-week period. I'm going to assess where the child he's sleeping for 1 hour a night. He is doing, he can spell 50 of the high frequency words, but not the rest. And the child is not picking up a pen at all. That's my assessment. Then I'm going to plan a strategy, provide those sleep tactics, provide some extra spelling intervention, and provide a different type of pen. And then I'm going to do my intervention for 6 weeks, and then I'm going to assess again to see if I can demonstrate progress. And then we're all going to come back together again and say, right, well, now he can use a pen and he's really happy, but he really hates his chair. And then you just go on this cycle: assess, plan, do, review. And it seems to work. That's where I've had my most success. Different strategies for different problems, for different reasons, for different children in different classrooms and different subjects in different times and different ages. It's too vast to answer in one go. All yours. Faiza, have you got any other examples?
I'm totally with you on that in terms of differentiation, in terms of adaptations, I would call them. But I really like the idea where, you know, you just ask, and then from that asking, whatever comes out, you make up your plan, because then you're actually giving the ownership, every stakeholder who is there, that, you know, the child stated that, oh, I can't hold a pencil because the pencil is too thick, or it's too round, or it's slippery, or whatever. Then you can literally bring that on board. And if the teacher is there, the parent is there, third parties in terms of clinical experts are there, then everybody aligns the goals, and then very achievable, realistic goals are retained in that conversation for us to go back, let's say 6 weeks for a review, and look into the factor that were they achieved? Did we need the strategy to be revisited, or create a new one, whatnot? So I totally understand, and I believe what you're saying. What about you, Massrat?
The technology's not been in our favor today, has it, one way or another?
But you should be proud of us. We rocked it.
We just
I
rocked it.
totally am. That's because you're amazing people. You totally are. Yes, yeah. So, Massrat, answer Faiza's question. Yes. Except that you're on mute. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So if I have to look at that question and answer that, how teachers can LSA workers can work together? So when I'm looking at a child, with the teachers are supporting children in the classroom. Teachers are supporting the student in the mainstream classroom. And if they have the difficulties, the teachers work on the resources that are required in the classroom for them to get along with the academic work that they are doing. So that would mean giving the child extra time or resources that they are going to need within the classroom. Where LA worker, the learning support at the same time works on the remedial, because whenever a child has a learning difficulty or a learning problem, there are certainly areas where they are lagging behind. It could be reading, it could be writing, it could be anything else. So they need to be remediated. And that would mean you're going behind grade level to work with them. So if they are in grade 3, the teachers do the grade 3 work, but they know what resources they can use to help the child within that grade 3 classroom, whereas the learning support department works with the remedial work. That is, if they have their reading and writing ability, say grade 1, that's where I would see the learning supports role, as that they are working with the remedial work. So they are putting in remedial programs in place to help the child bridge the gap. So this is how teachers and learning support departments work together. And when it comes to differentiating strategies, when you are working with the child within the classroom, teachers, I mean, with the resources that you have, it would depend on that as to how much differentiation you could do. But this is how parallelly we can work together. That is, the learning support have their own role and the teachers have their own.
So that was a brilliant way of pulling together all of those different points there, and about how people can work together. And I'm struck listening to you and to listen to everybody, how again it's about people pulling together, adults pulling together and drawing on a range of different resources in order to be able, and resources and people, and external people as well as internal people, trained people as well as just the finance department who are learning the language, drawing on everybody. And you know what's at the heart of it? That's coming through really, really strongly from everything that you're saying is an incredibly powerful determination. And it's a determination. If I were to go back to the very first question that we asked about the trends and the direction, I would say that is, I mean, this is coming out really powerfully from all three of you. And I think that what you're saying is that you're recognizing that there is an increasing determination. And it's like, there is no choice. And it's not like there's no choice, it's a bad thing. It's like there's no choice and it's a good thing. It's like, we are so going to do this. We've proven today we've overcome technology, and actually people can prove this, and it can make it happen if we push it through. I am conscious of time, and I wonder if it's possible to go around each of you to think about and to offer one forward-looking perspective, that if determination was in everyone's minds and that call to action was there, what would you say this should be done, and it should be done now or as soon as possible? So what one thing would you say? So Massrat, let's come to you. What one, it's almost like a piece of advice, but it's like a call to action, would you have?
So I conclude by one thing that is within our system. When we're talking about inclusion, inclusion is not just a concept; it is practice. So when we are talking about practice, have alternate pathways within the school system. It is, again, it's not a privilege that we are offering to people that we are inclusive schools or we are inclusive educators. Everybody has to be inclusive, because you are going to have different kind of children. When you are open your doors to having children within the within your school, you're opening the door to the population, and there's everybody on the spectrum. So one piece of advice is have alternate pathways within the school to accommodate children, especially when they come up to high school. Yes, we talk about inclusion right up to middle school, giving them the support. Okay, we are including, we are doing this, but going ahead from high school to their life after school, open up the pathways for them, have skill-based subjects within your curriculum that children can opt for, so that will help them build up their life after school. So that is where I see the future that we should be taking.
Yeah. Inclusion is not a concept, it is a practice. Good. Faiza, what would you say if you could push forward one thing to make that difference?
See, in 2025, moving forward, since the focus is very much on, as Massrat said, that in the region, we are very much towards going systematically towards inclusion, rather, I would say, moving beyond accommodations to designing schools and making, aspects of workspaces and communities, where I personally believe the one thought that we all should have is that inclusion is the foundation, not an afterthought. That should be our moving forward, that it's the foundation, not an afterthought, and it should come organically.
Brilliant. Foundation is inclusion is the foundation, not an afterthought. And Louise?
Okay,
apart from both of what they've said, because that was really good.
Because they're both absolutely right, but you want a third opinion. So my thing is, for 2025, let's all challenge ableism. Ableism is the expectation that somebody who is neurodiverse or is disabled is less than anybody else. An example would be expecting an autistic person to communicate in the same way as a non-autistic person, or to act normal. You can challenge it by providing universal design, using neuro-affirmative language, understanding that this is not pathology. We don't need to pathologize our conditions, and help to, in the moment, challenge when those things come up, accepting the social model of difference, not disability, but So I know that there are physical disabilities, vision, hearing impairment. These are disabilities and they are impacted by society. But actually many other of the neurodiverse conditions can be seen as successful things rather than negative things. So challenge ableism constantly.
And on that note, I think we should be drawing to a close. It has been a huge pleasure chairing this panel, and we've overcome some of our own difficulties and with the technology en route, but we've shown how we can do it, and we've had some amazing thoughts. It has been an enormous pleasure and privilege to work with you and to help shape these ideas. And I really hope that everybody who's been listening will take forward these thoughts and ideas along with all the practical examples you've had. Thank you so much. And Jihan, over to you.
Yeah, really interesting discussion, guys. That was great. And thank you all for joining us for this important discussion on SEN and inclusive education. A special thank you to our panelists for sharing their expertise and insights with us today. If you'd like to connect with our speakers or have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us on our email, marketing@guesseducation.com. As we wrap up, you'll be redirected to a short feedback survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts, as your input really helps us shape future sessions. A recording of today's webinar will be available soon on our YouTube channel, and we'll also send it to all attendees via email. And some exciting news, GESS Saudi Arabia 2025 is taking place from the 26th to the 28th of May in Riyadh, and registration is now live. And I'll just send up a short pop-up on the screen now. So register now for free using the pop-up here. And thank you again to our speakers and to all of you for being part of today's session. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar and hopefully in person at GESS Saudi Arabia 2025. Take care and goodbye for now.